Do you know what Albert Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world? If you don't know the answer, stick around, folks. We will let you know because it could jumpstart and power your overall retirement. Welcome. Show's called Your Money Wealth. My name's Joe Anderson. I'm a certified financial planner, president here at Peer Financial Advisors. And of course, I'm with my co-host, Big Al Clopine. Hello, Big Al.
How you doing, Joe?
The eighth wonder of the world.
Yes, it has to do with finance, I believe.
You are the ninth wonder.
I'm not so sure about that.
Of the world. Big Al. Big Al. So what's the answer? Albert Einstein said compound interest is a wonderful thing. It is the eighth wonder of the world. Do you know how to apply it in your situation? That's today's financial focus. All right, let's explain this real simple. We'll talk about a little cup of Joe. No pun intended here. Let's say that most of you like to have a cup of coffee. Maybe it's $3.50 per day. Some of you might have a couple of cups of coffee per day. But let's just take a look at what that potentially could cost you long term if we put the compounding effect into play here. So your average cup of coffee is $3.50. If I take a look, it's costing me about $100. That's $1,200 a year that I'm spending on Joe. Right? Instead of doing that, why don't we invest it? Why don't we save that $3.50 per day and see what that compounds at 6% over 30 years? It's $100,000. That's just 1 year of coffee turned into $100,000 in your overall retirement. I'm not saying don't get your cup of coffee, but $3.50, can we save $3.50? I think the answer is yes. Another quick example here. If I want to retire with $1 million, everyone wants that $1 million, right? What do you need to do? The compounding effect will help you if you start early. So wake up your kids, right? And say, hey, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, depending on your average age when you start. So if I'm 50 years of age and I want $1 million at 65, you're going to have to save $3,400 a month. If I start at age 20, it's $300, okay? So that is the power of compounding. The earlier I start, the bigger pool of money that I will have. Let's break things down. Let's bring in the big man.
So today, we are going to talk about compounding, whether you like it or not, because compounding can make the difference between a great retirement and a subpar retirement, or really not much of a retirement at all. So a few things that we'll focus on. One is positive compounding. In other words, how to use these rules to your benefit, and so that you're actually taking your savings and compounding to a great future. Another one, though, is negative. This can work in the reverse direction if you have too much debt or you make some mistakes. And then finally, we'll go into some tips on kind of how to supercharge this to get into a much better position. So, Joe, this is one of those things. It's kind of fun, right? Think about, gosh, if I save a little bit here, a little bit there, what that can grow into, and it makes a big difference in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you put on your dream board here and say, if I want a dollar figure when I retire, right, or if I want to pass a certain amount to my kids, what does that look like? So that positive compounding. But you're right, Al, there's a slippery slope here, right? Some people get into that negative, and that negative can have just the same effect on the downside.
It can. So let's start with positive compounding. So what does that mean? So the first thing is time. Time is on your side if you start early. It's not on your side if you start too late. Although we do get the question, I'm age 50 and I haven't even started. You know what? Then start now. It's better to start at 50 than 60. It's better to start at 60 than 70. So time is your friend. The earlier you start, the better. Another would be to invest regularly. Figure out how to do that. I know that's difficult. Some people are spending every penny they have and then some. And we're doing this show in San Diego, Southern California. Cost of living is high. But when you really look at it, there may be ways to save a little bit more. And then finally, your rate of return will get a little bit into investment investing, because that makes a big difference, Joe, as well, in terms of what your portfolio is going to be. You got to have it invested correctly.
Right, and when you look at time as well, let's just put the scope of retirement, for instance. I retire at 65 or age 70. I mean, I still have a lot of time left, right? Because there's another 10, 20, 30 years of my overall retirement. So the compounding effect doesn't stop unless you do something with your money that you're making mistakes with, right? Because the higher expected rate of return that you have in your overall portfolio, that compounding effect really magnifies. But Al, let's just bring it down a notch and just explain what the heck compounding actually means.
Yeah, we'll kind of start at the basics, right? So compounding essentially means you have a certain amount of money and then it grows with interest or growth or dividends or whatever kind of investment it is. And so at the end of the year, you've got more than you started with, and now you're going to compound on a larger amount. So let's just do a little example. So we've got $1,000 here, and we got a 3% interest rate. So this is like a savings account. So at the end of year one, you got $1,030. Okay, so that's not too bad. But now you get 3% on $1,030, so now it's 31% interest. So you got a little bit more. In the following year, you got 32% interest, and that's how this escalates. It's even better when you have a higher rate of return, but this is just an example of how this works.
Right. Yeah, you start with that $1,000 here, and then you get the 3% on the 1,000, and then it's a higher balance, a higher balance, and a higher balance with that straight rate of return, right? So of course you can do the math. If you have 6% rate of return, of course you're going to be continued to work on a higher balance. That negative compounding also happens when you have negative returns, and then you start pulling money from the overall accounts and so on. But this is the concept of compounding and the power of compounding effect. This is a really interesting and kind of cool example. Let's talk about Jack and Jill, shall we, Al?
Yes.
All right. So Jack, he's going to start at 30. Jill is responsible. She's going to start saving at age 21. So Jill's going to put in $2,400 a year, okay? And she stops at age 30. She's 21. She's only going to save until age 30. She's going to put in a total of $21,600, okay? She's going to start early, and she's got this 9-year window. Jack, I don't know, who knows what Jack's doing, right? But he's not saving money. He's buying cars, he's going to the bar, I don't know what he's doing. But he's going to start at age 30, right? And he's going to save the same amount of money. But he's not going to stop until his retirement date of age 67. Who do you think will have the most money at retirement?
Yeah, you would think Jack, right? Because he invested
sure.
almost 5 times as much.
Right. He saved diligently till age 67. Jill, she's like, no, I'm going to start early. I'm going to stop at age 30. Well, here's the difference, folks. Jill is going to have $2.5 million versus $1.5 million because she started 10 years early. That's compounding, right? If you have, would you rather have $1 million? Here's another example, El. Would you rather have $1 million or would you rather have a penny double every day?
Well, I would say $1 million, but I guess that's probably the wrong answer.
Right, exactly, because once you get into those higher numbers, right, that 500 doubles to $1 million, then the $1 million doubles to $2 million, the $2 million doubles to $4 million, and so on, that compounding effect really, really takes off. And so when you look at the rate of return, that's looking at your portfolio now, if we kind of put it back to basic retirement strategies, you know, if I'm younger, you want to take on more risk. If I'm older, you probably want to take on less, but here's kind of what the numbers look like.
Well, and it's interesting when you think about it is how much difference the rate of return. And we're not saying you can earn 4, 8, 12%. This is just an example. The higher the rate of return, the higher this can grow to, and it magnifies with time, as you can see on this. You get out to 50 years, which I know is a long period of time, but look at the difference it makes from a 4% to an 8% to a 12%. It's pretty dramatic.
Folks, we want to help you power up your compounding effect. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. This week, our special offer is just that. We're going to help you power up your compounding effect. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer icon, and you can download it for free. Yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer. We got to take a break. When we get back, we're going to switch to the dark side. We're going to take a look at the negative compounding effect, so you don't want to miss this. We'll be back in just a second. Hey, welcome back to the show. The show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson, Alan Clopine. We're talking about powering up the compound effect. Go to yourmoneywealth.com. Click on our white paper this week. It's just that, powering up your compounding effect. Go to yourmoneywealth.com. Click on that special offer. That's our gift to you. Before we get into the negative side of compounding, let's see how you did on the true-false question.
As investment dollars compound in retirement accounts, the taxes on the money also compounds. Joe, would you say, is that true or false?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the larger, well, it depends, I guess, if it's in a Roth, not necessarily.
Yeah.
But if it's in your retirement account, a 401k, that's why we always talk about tax diversification, because if you have $1 that turns into $2, that turns into $4, and so on and so forth, right? All of that is going to be taxed at ordinary income rates. So the longer potentially the money's in that account, all of that compounding effect will happen, and it's taxed at ordinary income rates. That's the beauty of retirement accounts. The compounding tax deferred. For us, the beauty on the other side of the spectrum is that, yeah, it's growing tax deferred. It's a lot larger balance, so they get more tax. That's why we're big fans of Roth. So that could be a negative side.
It could be, and when you think about it, that's why we talk about Roth conversions, getting money into a tax-free environment where the compounding is actually tax-free, or the compounding outside of retirement where you have a capital gain environment, which is a cheaper tax. But let's talk about the negative compound effect, because that's probably just as important, because this can work against you as well. And so one is excessive debt, and we're seeing now that debt is increasing as time goes on. The second thing would be excessive fees in your accounts. So you can do something about the two of these. And the other one would be a mistake, like a 401k mistake, IRA mistake. Pulling money out too early. We'll get into that and why that's not necessarily a good idea. So Joe, I guess right off the bat is debt seems to be increasing as I guess for each generation.
Yeah, but if you look at it, we've been talking about, growth of your overall dollars, right? And it's like, it's great that if I can earn a little bit of interest or have an expected rate of return on my portfolio, that it's going to grow. In each year that it grows, that percentage of growth is going to be growth on a higher value. Well, guess what? The same is the exact same truth when it comes to, let's say, credit card debt. Right? And you have a lot higher interest, right? Those banks are making a lot more money on us than we are in the overall markets in most cases. Right? So when you look, hey, I have $10,000 in credit card bills and they're charging you 12, 14, 16%, that 16% is going on that 10,000 and it's compounding the other direction. And if you look, we are in, from a generational standpoint, this is the average consumer debt that, let's say, Gen X, Gen Z, baby boomers, the silent. This is the greatest generation.
It is the greatest, yeah, right?
I don't know why they call it the silent generation.
I don't know.
I've never seen that before.
Right.
But, you're looking at 18 to 23, 16,000, 24 to 39, it's about 100,000, 40 to 55, 140. So when you have that much consumer debt, depending on what interest rate that you have here, right, you're growing your assets on the wrong side of the balance sheet.
Right. I actually think that includes mortgage debt also.
Of course. You get very specific, Al. Once you give me the exact breakdown, what rate of return, right, what interest rate are they paying?
But I guess the point is every single generation, the debt's going up when you look at the last few years, except for the silent generation. And of course, it's different for different areas. If you look at West Coast, the debt's actually quite a bit higher because our mortgages are higher, property's more expensive. But at any rate, here's the point. The point is when you have too much debt, this works to your negative. So in other words, if you're saving money and you have compound to your benefit, if you have too much debt and you're paying interest, it's going exactly the opposite direction.
Right, and we talk control what you can't control, right? And so what you can control is the amount of money that you're saving. When are you starting to save? You can control those behaviors. Right? You can control, and do I go into debt? Do I purchase this or not? Some of us, we can't help but to go into debt because we need certain necessities. But you can control those activities. Here's another thing that you can control is the fees that you're paying in your overall investment strategy. Right? If you kind of take a look, if you're paying 2% in fees all in, most of you have no clue what you're paying in fees. Because I think you're looking at, all right, well, maybe I'm paying 1%, or I'm not paying any fees at all. Everyone is paying fees. Most of them are hidden. So you probably want to find out exactly what you're paying. But let's say you're paying 2% versus 1%. These numbers are staggering. So control what you can control. Where are you putting the dollars that are coming in? How fast or how early are you saving, right? Are you going into debt? Can you control your fees? Can you control your discipline? That's kind of the next one where people make mistakes.
This is a tough one, Joe, and I think a lot of us have been tempted to pull money out of our 401ks or IRAs when things get difficult. But there's problems with that. First of all, over half of us have done that. So if you've done it, you're in good company. But here's why that's not really such a good idea. It's because of all the taxes. When you're younger than 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty for early withdrawal. Oh yeah, there's federal taxes too, depending upon your tax bracket, and state taxes as well. And we actually are in the state of California. California has an early withdrawal penalty as well. And so depending upon what state you're in, the taxes, when all told, can add up to 50%, in some cases even more. So Joe, you think you're pulling out $50,000 from a retirement account, and you only get to keep about $25,000 because of the taxes and penalties.
Right, and of course Big Al is going to talk about the taxes and penalties, which is a huge component of it. But what is that really costing you in an opportunity cost? I think is more important. Because if I had that $50,000, right, you leave your company and you see this 401k balance and it's like, man, I could pay off some of this consumer debt. I just watched Your Money, Your Wealth. They said, get out of debt. I have 50 grand. I can pay off some debt. I can put some money in cash. And I think this is a really good opportunity for me to get back on my feet. Well, just be careful to understand all of the things that go into consideration here. Because you're right. You have that early withdrawal penalty, $3,500. Federal taxes, $12,000. State taxes, $5,000. What you really have is about $30,000 out of that $50,000. So what does that mean, right? If I kept that $50,000 in my retirement account, okay? 10 years later, that 50 grand is now 100. It doubled, assuming a 7% rate of return. Let's say it's 20 years. Now it's 200 grand. 30 years. Now it's almost $400,000. So you take the $50,000 out, you cash it out, and you buy a new car, right? No one's done that, I'm sure, right? Let's say you did. What did that car cost you? It cost you like 400 grand in future value, in future, right? So you got to be thinking of your future self when you want to make those decisions.
You know, when you put it that way, in terms of pulling out 50,000, keeping 30, whatever the number is, buying a car, you've lost 400,000 over 30 years. That's a pretty big difference.
Right. I mean, that's the balance of most people's retirement account right there.
Yeah, if that. Most people are actually even less than that.
Less than that, right? So if you're younger and you have, all right, I saved this and I don't know what to do with the money, just cash it out. Start running some numbers to see what really that decision is going to cost you. Get our white paper. It's called Powering Up the Compounding Effect. YourMoneyYourWealth.com. Click on that special offer. Speaking of powering up, let's supercharge it. That's what we're going to talk about when we get back. Hey, welcome back to the show. The show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Go to YourMoneyYourWealth.com to power up the compounding effect. It's our new white paper. Go to YourMoneyYourWealth.com. Click on the special offer. Let's see how you did on the true-false question.
It is better to eliminate high interest debt and avoid the negative compound effect than to invest money before the debt is paid off. Joe, would you say that's true or false?
That's a tough one. It's a combination.
It is tough, right? It is a combo.
Right, because here's what happens is that I have debt and I'm just going to throw everything at the debt, right? I want to get debt free. I don't like debt hanging over my head. I think that's too hard to do because all of a sudden now maybe that took me 5 years to pay off all the debt and I didn't have $1 saved in that 5 years and the positive compounding effect. I mean, I think you want to do a little bit of both. You want to make sure that you're saving, but you're also diligently paying out the debt. I don't know. I think are you a fan of paying off the debt first because it probably has a higher rate of return? What's your thought?
Yeah, so I do like to pay off higher interest rate debt. But I also think it's equally important, especially if you have a 401k, to make sure that you at least contribute up to the match. and in some cases it's 3% or 4% or 5% of your salary to get that full match, that would be really important, because that's where you invest $1, and in some cases the company puts in $1 for you, which means 100% of return right away. So I think it's really a combination. You've got high credit card debt or high student loan interest. You want to make sure you get that paid off too. But I agree with you, Joe. I think you want to be a little bit more careful. It's not just one or the other. I think you want to look at both.
Right. Let's get into supercharging. Right. So yeah, we just talked about it. The first step of all of this is, just trying to get out of debt as fast as you can, but also making sure that you're starting as soon as possible with your savings activities. Right? If you're not, like Al said in the beginning of the show, it doesn't matter if you're 20 years old, 50 years old, 70 years old, start today. Right? Start today. And then just try to increase this as you go. Because as Al alluded, what people tend to do is that they increase the debt as they go. Hey, I got a car lease and I'm only paying $500 a month. And then, I have some extra cash flow. Or I refinanced my house and I freed up another $1,000 a month. Does that go into savings? A lot of times that goes on more consumer debt. Hey, now let's get the TV. Let's do this. Let's do that. Right?
Yeah. And Joe, the other thing is, in terms of contributing, work out a way to save 0.5% or 1% of your income. Just look at your budget. There might be a couple little things you can cut out, and the following year, try to increase that to 2%. Maybe you get a little cost of living raise. Maybe you get a little bonus. Following year after that, 3%. And then over time, maybe 10 years, you're up to 10% or 15% or 20, whatever number you're trying to get to. That's how you can make incremental changes and have it be doable.
Try to keep your fees low, and then just attack this, right? And let it grow. Let's switch gears and let's go to our favorite part of the show. It's called Ask the Experts.
I feel safe investing in CDs, treasuries, and bonds. How can you maximize their growth? From Sarah in Carmel Valley. That is kind of a tough one, because those particular investments that you mentioned are more for safety and not much for growth. But Joe, any thoughts on maximizing your growth there?
Well, you got to be careful with the words that you're choosing, Sarah, because if you're looking at how do I maximize my growth in bonds, okay, well, there's all sorts of flavors with bonds, right? You have a treasury bond, you have a treasury bill, but then you can go into a corporate bond. You can go into a high yield bond. And then you can go into 1 year duration versus 5 versus 30. And so the longer that you go, even though it's a bond, let's say, but if I have a 30-year bond that's a junk bond or high yield bond, I'm taking on risk. So you might think, hey, I'm getting a larger rate of return with this bond, which is supposed to be safe, but you're taking on basically the same amount of risk as the overall market. With CDs, there are hybrid CDs out there that you can have some bells and whistles on it. I think if you want safety, you have to live and die by that. Right now, interest rates are really low. So if you want to increase the overall rate of return, then you have to take a look at different investment vehicles, but make sure that you understand the risk and return relationship between whatever investment that you get into.
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing too is people don't really realize they're taking risk in every single kind of investment. And in fact, when you think about CDs, which generally don't have as high a rate of return as inflation, you actually are losing money slowly. I mean, that's kind of a given. It's almost a guarantee to lose money in terms of purchasing power slowly over time.
So let's kind of power up your compounding effect. Of course, start early and invest often. It's the rules that keep on giving. Maximize your positive compounding effect, right? Making sure that you're consistently saving, understanding what investments that you're in, and of course, just trying to mitigate that negative compounding effect as much as you possibly can. And of course, to put a bow on this thing, you gotta supercharge it. Just putting everything together, understanding the pros and the cons, and then really supercharge this. You can get to your goals that much quicker. If you need help, go to our website, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on our white paper this week. It's just that, powering up your compounding effect. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer. That's our gift to you. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson, and we'll see you next week.